chilling, atmospheric, classically inspired, but still modern and original feeling. I'm not sure there's much that I can say about this game that hasn't already been said. Partially because I try not to look into people's videos on these games before I actually play them. What if I told you that we got sci-fi? Heavy hitting emotions, classic horror survival gameplay, all wrapped up in a fantastically told story. And then I told you that was all in a modern horror game. Well, thanks to Rose Engine in the year 2022, we got just that with Signalis. By the way, Rose Engine is literally a two-person development team. 2 people made this game. Howdy. My name's Christine, and I like video games. If it says anything about this game, I beat the entire game in a single day. Not because, you know, it's super short per se or anything like that, just I couldn't stop playing. One of my first thoughts just 10 minutes into this game was, God, does this game have the atmosphere? From even just the main menu, where the eyes of the replica you end up playing as follow you to each option you go to, the music, it all just paints a picture without saying a single word. Loading up into the intro, I noticed something, and honestly, I normally kind of pick apart games for having super subtle music in their intros and not doing any big soundtrack work, but this game just did it right. It's crazy to me that such subtle music work set the atmosphere for this game super well. That lack of big soundtrack going, the way that the lighting is like kind of faded out and things look a little broken down, the somber tone of everything, the first sequence of this game absolutely puts you on edge. It makes you super unsettled, but at the same time, I was just so excited. You wake up in some type of cryo chamber of what seems to be a crashed ship. Soon afterward, you find a note explaining that the ship is called the Penrose and that it was sent out to the edge of the galaxy in search of habitable planets and moons. You find out that all Penrose vessels are piloted by a duo of a Gestalt, which is like this universe's version of a human, and a replica, which is an android, more or less. You are that replica. This immediately gives you the first objective of the game and starts to subtly teach you how it's going to teach you the game itself. And this is one of the most organic tutorials I think I've ever had a video game give to me. Seriously, I cannot get over how well they subtly teach you this game, and it may honestly have accidentally created a new standard for games that will rarely ever be met again. You see, this game doesn't do the whole pop-up on the screen tutorial telling you what to do right here type thing. It just leaves you notes that subtly explain to you what's going on or what you shouldn't be doing. This is also how they tell the story of the game, by the way. There isn't a large amount of cutscenes or dialogue you can actually hear. There's, in fact, no voice acting in the game, and I think it's better for it, weirdly enough. I think what I like about this is that it respects you as a player, right? It views you as an individual who can actually think about what's going on instead of, you know, the whole yellow paint situation that you would normally see in something. Seriously, let's talk about how this game teaches you that running is loud. I know it's like kind of common sense that running is loud, but like a normal horror game nowadays might literally paint your shoes yellow just to explain to you that running is loud. I'm looking at you, Resident Evil 4 Remake. I love Resident Evil 4 Remake, but I don't think there's any justifiable lore reasons you can actually hand us for this. Capcom, what the fuck is this? In lieu of yellow paint, instead, the game leaves out a note, not directed towards you specifically, that essentially says, or that essentially reminds people that people in their different dormitories in this building you are in can hear you running through the hallways, and it's very loud and disruptive, so keep it down. This is like the game's subtle way of telling you, hey, running is going to make a lot of noise, and enemies are going to notice you way easier if you run around everywhere. Another early good sign for this game that told me this was truly going to be something inspired by classic horror was this lock-picking puzzle you get into early, like really early in the game, where you find a note right next to it that literally just tells you to figure it out. I was mind blown to see a game be that on the nose with something without breaking immersion even at all. In fact, I kind of think the way this game handles tutorials and story is part of the reason why I beat this game in a single day. The way that it feels like you're constantly unraveling a mystery as things go because you're just finding notes that tell you what's going on. No one's directly saying anything to you. Keeps you super intrigued. And then also too, the way that the tutorials just don't make you feel like you're playing a game. It doesn't like gamify it at all. The way that the game uses notes and files too is also really cool in the way that it brings a lot of believability to the world itself. I won't spoil anything, but you know how in most horror games you kind of have to deal with this like suspension of disbelief that, you know, this enemy just tanked like 5 bullets to the skull and has no problem. A shotgun to the full back of his face does fuck all against him. This game actually has a lore reason as to why enemies are so tough to kill. And that was completely unnecessary, but so good for keeping you just invested. Another reason I think there's not really voice acting in this game is there's just not many characters for you to talk to. Most of the living things you encounter in this game are, they don't want to talk. You do run into a very small amount of characters, and I feel like every single time I ran into somebody and actually spoke to him in this game, it just made me feel more uneasy. I felt super distrusting of every single person I ran into, even when they showed no signs of being a problem inherently. What this also led to too is this very natural unfolding of who the characters you do interact with and do see are. You form strong opinions about them early on and slowly learn more about their story, which gives you a lot of space to really decide how you feel about them. And that's a lot of how they handle the plot as well. Things are very much given to you and giving you a lot of space to just think about it. I don't know, it's very good. Speaking of the plot, I'll go ahead and give you at least a small taste of it really quick. As mentioned earlier, you awaken in some type of cryo chamber. Searching around the ship, you find notes that start to suggest that the Gestalt that you are accompanied by was named Ariane Young. In your search for her, you leave the ship, finding yourself on a snowy plain very shortly before you arrive at the S-23 Sierpinski. It's not long into getting into the S-23 Sierpinski, you start to really get that something terrible has happened here, and it might have been pretty recent. I love the suspense they add to your journey just going from the Penrose over to the Sierpinski, as it goes into this like first-person point-and-click style game that builds a lot of suspense in the idea that there could be something hiding behind anything, and movement is just multiple clicks, slowly trudging through the snow. Once you're in the Sierpinski, this game gives you its signature style of delivery by finding a gun in a drawer with a manual that just kind of lightly explains what's going on, and also a note warning you not to waste ammo, because it's very limited here. Once again, classic survival horror. This also introduces you to another thing about classic old school horror survival games that some people love and some people absolutely cannot stand: item management. Now, don't worry, it's not Resident Evil 0. You don't have to go drop stuff in the floor in the middle of a room and go back. There's an item box and it does transfer from save room to save room, so you don't have to constantly backtrack super far. Also, let's go ahead and address something that was a very phenomenal part of this game, but it did lead to a complaint I have about the later part of the game as well. And that is the puzzles. The puzzles are excellent here. Nothing was so challenging that I was stuck for like an entire hour or anything. I didn't find myself really stuck at any puzzles past maybe 30 minutes or so, but we have to credit the game on having not only good puzzles, but a great variety of puzzles. You've got general logic puzzles where all the information's in front of you and you kind of just have to piece it together. There's some audio-based puzzles. There's just some general find the key, bring it to the thing type puzzles. And the nice part is that the puzzles are spaced apart just enough that generally for like my entire 9 to 10 hour playthrough, I felt like I pretty frequently needed to solve something, but wasn't constantly just solving things. Also, speaking on the length, I know that this is a little bit of a hot take, especially all the things I saw about Resident Evil Requiem online. I think 9 to 10 hours is a very healthy length for a video game, personally, especially a horror game. I think a horror game that spills over 15 hours really risks losing its entire X factor when it comes to atmosphere, creepiness, all that, and you just end up rushing as hard as you can towards the end of the game because you're just kind of tired of it. The 30+ hour conquests are great for something like RPGs where the story needs to unfold that way, but I just don't really feel like anything above 15 hours has to happen in a horror game personally. I'd rather it be 12 or so hours at the longest and super replayable. But anyways, back to that one complaint I had. I hate the last puzzle of this game. I don't want to get super far into spoiler territory, but the last hour of this game just kind of frustrated me because of this puzzle. That said, that's like one of the only complaints I truly do have about the game, which is that's pretty good. The combat in this game is a big part of why I say this game feels classically inspired, but still thankfully modern. These controls are not full-blown tank controls where you have to move forward and backward using, the left thumbstick and then also turn using the left thumbstick in the way that you have to sit still and whatnot. This is just a full free moving. This is just a full free moving left thumbstick. And then your right thumbstick is used to aim whenever you actually aim your weapon. Additionally, too, if you're not really a fan of the top-down thing, I do think it's very well designed for this game and does a great job at hiding certain enemies to give you little jump scares and build some suspense. But there is a mod that allows you to play the whole game as a third-person shooter. I haven't tried it yet, but that's really cool that somebody did that. That all said, though, the combat is just one of those things where it bleeds this old school horror, but still, fortunately, bleeds modern day accessibility. That said, that accessibility doesn't mean that this game is just easy. In fact, there's a few parts of this game that are kind of brutal. I'm pretty sure the first boss killed me like at least 8-10 times, somewhere around there. I can't remember. I didn't count. After that boss fight, there's also a note that you get to read that explains that the android unit you just fought is not actually really well suited for combat. And I remember thinking to myself right afterward, if that's not meant for combat, what am I gonna run into in the future here? Lastly, we need to cover some of my favorite parts of this game's story. Naturally, that means there's gonna be some spoilers here. So if you're watching this and you're planning on playing this game and you haven't yet, maybe hit the save for later button. And if you're back from that and you're here again, seriously, thank you so much. I appreciate you. First, I want to mention how this game explains each one of the replicas that you run into, or each type of replica, I should say. The classified information on the EULR units that their entire neural pattern was based on a ballet dancer, which is why they have this vast love for music. Such an endearing little piece of lore about them that kind of makes you like the units more. But then, like many things, this turns really bleak as you start to realize that the powers that be were utilizing this love of music as a control method for these units. You start to realize that all the different replicas that were made are all based off of a certain type of neural pattern that makes them great at the job, but also makes them very controllable. It gives you the idea that these replicas are seen as nothing more than meat for the grinder. This is further reinforced by a very haunting conversation you have with a Mina unit you encounter later in the game, who's dealing with a massive injury and tells you to leave them behind because, and this is not full verbatim, this is like kind of loose quoted. She is too old to be repaired, and it would be a waste of resources, right? Just another drop in the bucket. That just another drop in a bucket line really hit me hard, because as I started to see the way that these units were being used in subservient manners and how even their joys were being used against them to force them further into the workforce, it kind of started to feel a little too real sometimes. I felt like this theme was put even further into perspective by the ending I got, which is I forgot to look up the actual name of the ending. Let's look that up really quick. Names of endings for Signalis. The nowhere ending is what I got. An ending where Elster leaves back through the gate towards the Penrose, attempts to pull the door off of the Penrose. On the way to the Penrose, you start to see what looks like hundreds of bodies littered across the ground that you did not notice before. And every single one of them is an Elster unit. It starts to give you this feeling like she wakes up every single day attempting to just accomplish the same purpose, doing the same things and failing the same ways over and over again. Every single time losing another piece of herself as Elster loses her arm trying to rip the door off. In fact, the metaphor for this ending was so strong, I kind of thought this was the canon ending and the theme of the story. By the way, if you haven't guessed by all the times that I've said things about the ending I got, there are multiple endings to this game. And in fact, a lot of the community seems to believe that all of them are actually canon, which is kind of crazy to think about. Now, if you want a really good breakdown of this game's story, like a very elaborate one, Indie Explorer did one. And I know as like a really small content creator, I'm probably supposed to like tell you to subscribe to me and watch my videos. That video is very well put together. A lot of hard work went into that, and I think it deserves even more attention than it's already gotten. I also found the moments following the ending to be incredibly haunting. Go back to the main menu, where Elster's eyes would follow you before, but you notice a stream of blood coming out of one of the eyes. The pupils don't look the same. The eyes don't look the same, and they no longer follow each option, thus implying that this is now Elster dead, as opposed to the version we had before. The crazy part too is if you click quit or you click begin, it puts you right back into the beginning of the game. But this time it's like different. It's much more well lit and lively. You find Ariane alive. When you go into the Sierpinski, it's completely different. If you have not done a second playthrough of this game, I'm telling you right now, you need to go do a second playthrough of this game. I'm working on it at the moment as we, record this. It puts even more story into it and even more perspective. It makes more of the endings make sense and makes some other things that happen in your first playthrough make even more sense and less sense at the same time. The way that they pull off a story where they don't fully tell you everything and they let you piece things together, and then they make sure that the way you're piecing things together means that there's no fully definite answer and that all of these endings could be canon and make sense. Absolutely phenomenal. Insane. I love a multiple endings game, but even more, a multiple endings game where you get multiple really, I don't want to say good endings because, well, some of them are like really bleak, but multiple endings that make sense for what you're seeing. With all the opinions and things that I've talked about out of the way, I think it's pretty obvious where I stand with this game. You should play it. It's phenomenal. This game is fan-fucking-tastic. Also, since we've gotten to this part, I guess I get to explain my ranking system for how I want to rank games on this channel. You see, since the channel is called Christane's Game Shelf, I figured we might as well just rank games off of a shelf system. Bottom shelf means I didn't really like the game very much, and I would likely just sell it back out of my collection after completing it. Or maybe that I didn't even complete it. Middle shelf is more like, I enjoyed this game, but a second playthrough is probably not happening anytime soon. And then there's the top shelf. This is the shelf for games that I literally just can't stop thinking about. Games that stick in my brain like glue. Once again, I think it's pretty obvious. Signalis sits very comfortably as a top shelf game. This game is absolutely phenomenal, and honestly, I own it digitally, and I'm really thinking about getting a physical copy just to commemorate my adoration for this game. Now, if you've watched all the way to the end of this video and you enjoy how I cover games, a like would be appreciated. Maybe a comment with your opinions on it so we can talk about it. That's part of the reason I started this channel anyways. I just want to talk to people about video games, honestly. And if you really enjoyed it and you really feel like I deserve it, your subscription would be highly appreciated. I see time as one of the most valuable things that people have in this world, and the fact that you're willing to spend it here, listening to me talk about video games, is something I'm very thankful for. My name's Christane. I really like games. I hope you have a good day. Peace out.